Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard every Wednesday here on WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in Fairview, North Carolina. Each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first two guests today, and they are Betty Baker and Tanya Fletcher. Welcome aboard, Betty and Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, I'm really excited because you told me off the air this is the first time you've been on both radio and Facebook Live, so you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So if anybody's watching, you can see these two guys. Great. And let me mention that Asheville-based Sterling Transitions is a moving and downsizing management company for older adults in various stages of transition. Co-owned by CEO Tanya Fletcher and COO Betty Baker, the company offers full service and customizable solutions to pack, move, sort, and liquidate. Sterling Transitions also specialize in estate sales and online auctions to help clients get fair market value for their unwanted items. Founded in 2012 by Tanya Fletcher, the company has experienced steady growth in Asheville. This is kind of exciting. Wow. Since 2021 in March, they've licensed additional locations in Atlanta and Southwest Florida. Very exciting. And so the first question I always ask folks is, let me ask, so you grew up where, Tanya, as a kid?
Atlanta, actually.
Atlanta. And Betty, you grew up where?
Maryland, Eastern Shore.
Okay. So when you were young women growing up, did you always know you wanted to be in this own business, helping people move in and pack? Is that what you always want to do? Tanya's saying yes.
My parents joke I always was in charge of all the garage sales and yard sales. So apparently it's in my blood that I was going to do this.
Well, you realize how you enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
I digress, and it ties right into your business. But I have a friend who I once asked to help me out on a Saturday morning, and he said he couldn't because he had to be at the garage sale. And I said, well, why can't your wife be at the garage sale and you come with me on Saturday morning? He couldn't because his wife was going to other garage sales, buying up other stuff, So we laugh, but one of the beauties of working, I guess, with you folks is you help avoid doing that, because I guess one of the problems people face is they have a lot of stuff and you help them get rid of some of the stuff.
That's right. Yes. And doing your own yard sale is pretty tiring and pretty exhausting. So it's nice to have someone else do it for you and make a lot more money too. So yes.
Well, talk about that process in terms of getting rid of stuff. In other words, so you work with somebody very often, I guess, are in the process of downsizing. Is that what happens? Mm-hmm. They're going from a large house into a smaller house where there was a death in the family or something. And that must be tough for some people, I guess, to get rid of stuff. Would you say that's true?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so the beauty of working with you folks is that you help guide them through the process. Is that what happens?
Yeah, and we're not emotionally attached to anything. So we are the third party that can come in and kind of be the practical sense and look at things in a different way that's not emotionally attached at all. So it's actually a really nice way to go through your items without having to get your emotions all involved in it.
Now, an ideal way to do this, or ideal time to do this, is before you have to face it. It's easier said than done. But I guess that makes it easier for people, right? If they call you in advance of having to downsize or in advance of having to do the transition. Does that happen sometimes?
It does. I think, the ideal is when a couple realizes, gosh, we have this huge home and we really just hang out in a small area of it. And some of those areas that we don't hang out in are a little daunting now. So it's great when they can, have a game plan of what's maybe the next step, and then call us immediately to say, okay, how do we do this? We can come in and spend time with them and help them with making those selections of the items they want to keep and start taking things away. But ideally, we leave things there and then we ultimately liquidate everything at one time through our favorite is the online auction, which was a godsend over COVID. We already had it in place, and that was a simple process that was able to continue on during the lockdown because nobody's coming really in contact with one another.
We'll talk about the process too, Betty, in terms of if somebody's going to move into a retirement community or assisted living community, whatever, in an ideal world, how far in advance should they work with you before they have to make that move?
A good 6 months would be good to, and they're waiting for their time. A lot of the assisted livings have wait lists. So if they've picked the one they'd like to work with, that's a good time to meet with us and have a game plan. Our process is a little different. It's maybe not logical in their mind, but once they've sat down with us and talked to us about it, we do a 1-hour consultation to see what their situation is and explain our process. And there's definitely light bulbs that start going off like, oh, I hadn't thought about doing it that way. So they have to wrap their head around our process, but it does work. It seems backwards. Everybody always wants to get rid of things first and then be left with what's they're going to take. But we say, no, focus on what you want to take. That's the most important thing.
Interesting.
You need to take care of everything else on the back end.
The beautiful thing too, I would imagine, is that people also then working with you don't then have to store stuff, too, in terms of, I guess you see it too often that so many people want to take everything and then when they can't take everything, they just pay all sorts of money to store it.
Mhm.
And the goal, I guess, is not to have to store stuff.
Absolutely not. At this point in their life, they need to be having it out and about and using it in storage, unless we should have gotten into the storage business because a lot of people store things and they forget all about them. So we try to stay away from that. We try to get them to use what they're going to keep, not put it in a box and put it in an attic or put it in storage. And it does take a long time. It's a lifetime of belongings that they're going through. So giving themselves 6 months or longer to go through and make some decisions that are good decisions is really important. And having them make their own decisions versus someone making them for them is really important.
And you mentioned the storage. I know friends, for example, Tanya just moved. They now have their stuff in 2 storage facilities. So they moved into a house and then they had to rent 2 separate storage facilities because they didn't have enough. They didn't have enough space to put it in one, which is something wrong with it.
We go through houses. Sometimes we'll go to a house and they've lived in the house for 20 something years and they still have boxes they've never opened from when they moved there.
And even boxes from the move before that.
Mhm.
Betty, so true what you just said. When we moved to Fairview, where we live now, we had put an upstairs pull down attic kind of thing. And we had put stuff up there 8 years ago and we didn't look at it once, so it's just really so true. Talk a little bit also, I'm not familiar with, then you mentioned an online auction. What is that all about?
Do you want to tell me?
No, you're asking me.
Well, our process is to eliminate everything in the home. So we lot items together that are similar. Everything is loaded up to an auction site platform. The auction lasts for 5 days. Lots start at $10 with $1 increment bids, but you have 5 days to bid on it. So you can go in at the very start of the auction and place your bids and walk away from it till maybe the last day. Obviously, there's a lot of activity at the beginning, whole lot of activity on that last day. Ultimately, what's nice is we're able to get everything sold. We most of the time have at least one bid on every item, and the things that are desirable in the market, you just have 2 people that are they get competitive out there. So they will bid up to a point where finally somebody gives up. That's what we love. We love the competitiveness that people have when they start bidding on things. And then we have a few days for the pickup where folks come and pick up their winning items.
But you mean, so if they do this, then they won't have the pleasure of having a garage sale? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
No,
Yep.
we take care of all of it too. They don't have to stay there to watch or do anything. We actually ask people not to watch their things being sold online because it's emotional. So we say, you know what, go enjoy your new home, enjoy your whatever. We'll take care of the rest. So we take care of it for them and then just send them a check for their proceeds. So it's
Well,
a nice.
Talk about this because this is new to me, and I'm sure it's new to a lot of viewers as well. So this is also an opportunity to not only sell stuff through Sterling Transitions and the online auction, but if people want to buy stuff, they can check these online auctions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great one.
How do they find out about these?
On our website, we have sterlingtransitions.com, and we have on the upcoming sale page, we always have a link to all of our sales. So we have one every couple of weeks. So there's always one there that you can see. And it's a household full of items. So anything from TVs to beds to, we've sold cars, we've sold, towels. We can sell anything in a home. So if you're in the market to buy anything, before you go buy it brand new, people need to sell everything when they're moving and they're downsizing or they're liquidating an estate from someone that has passed away. It's a house full. So when people need things, it's a good way to buy.
What a terrific idea. Now, do you ever combine households? Do you have several things being sold from different households at a time?
Sometimes we'll consign another person's items into a house if we're already working with them and they're moving and we're kind of having a few little things that we're going to put into an auction, but we typically will do an entire estate for someone and there's not a lot of room for consignees. So we don't normally do one or two things. We usually do an entire estate, or we work with a client from start to finish and we'll consign slowly so we can get stuff out of their house as they're moving through the process. So yeah.
Now, the people doing the bidding, are they only from the Asheville area or are they outside of Asheville as well?
Beauty of an online auction is we can ship anything anywhere. There's a lot of people in California that like our auctions. We're always shipping to California. We sometimes will, depending on what kind of stuff we have, we might market it a little bit more. If it's, stuff from the beach, we might market a little bit more in Florida or Maryland or whatever, the shore, just to get the right people looking at the items. But we can ship anything that's small. And the person buying it is the person paying for the shipping. So, for the seller, it's not going to change anything other than getting a big market of people. We have 15,000 viewers on our auctions. So there's a lot.
Well, I was going to ask you, so if somebody wants to find out about these auctions, for example, more so for buying, but it could be selling as well, what's the best bet to get information?
Just through our website, sterlingtransitions.com, and then you go to upcoming sales and they click the picture and it goes straight into the auction. And we have information. There's actually on our website, we have a little tutorial on how to bid. It's a little 1-minute video and it tells you exactly how to register and how the bidding process works. But essentially it starts at $10 and then the highest bidder gets the prize. So they come and pick it up or they get it shipped to them at the end of the auction. So it's a pretty simple process. And we're always available by phone.
I'm sorry, Betty? Yeah.
Yeah, and our process is also well laid out on our website of the services that we offer and for somebody that's interested in actually using the service for themselves or their family member. Asheville is one of those areas. Western North Carolina is a large community of retirees, and we oftentimes have calls from children that are in other parts of the world even, and their parents have retired here, and they've recognized when they come to visit them over the holiday that they maybe need to make a transition and a move, and they're completely overwhelmed with the idea of, oh gosh, I have to take another week's vacation to try and help mom and dad do this. But that's our job. That's what we have the time for. So they're always very eager, and it's so much nicer to work with us than their kids because we're friendlier. We don't tell mom and dad what to do. So it ends up being a really nice relationship. We enjoy helping folks, and the kids are like, oh, I'm so glad you're handling it instead of me, because mom would never listen to a single word I said.
I think I was telling you off the air, I just went through this in terms of being my sister-in-law, and it's very, it was kind of irksome. It was always arguments and battles, and
yes,
and we didn't listen, whatever. Wow, what a pleasure. And you mentioned, Tanya, Sterling Transitions. How do you spell Sterling?
Sterling.
Okay, so
and
people
transitions with an S.
Now, if folks go to that website, can they sign? Do you have an email list, or do you have a list that goes out? I'll see upcoming sales.
We do, and we have, there's also a list to sign up for if you're interested in our new locations in Atlanta or Florida. If they're having, right now, actually, Atlanta is having a sale going on right now. So they have links to their sales as well. But you can sign up to get an email. We send an email on the day the sale starts and the day the sale ends so that people know it started and know it's about to finish. So for 5 days, it's live.
And,
So,
I'm just kicking myself in that. I wish I had known about you sooner, because what a tremendous service you're providing for people. And let me ask you, can somebody sign up for the service if they just want to sell the estate? So they don't have to, none of the relocation stuff, but they just want to help selling their stuff, they can contact you?
they can, yep. We do full estate. So if they have a full estate, if they've already gotten the 5 things they want and they don't want anything else in the estate, they can contact us and literally give us the keys. We have a lot of people that maybe from out of town and they hand us the keys and we take care of everything else. We get all the trash out. We get the house professionally cleaned. We work with realtors. So we have some realtors on staff if they want. So we can do everything else. We just can't figure out what they want to keep. So if they've already done that, we can do that.
But and the beauty of it's sort of like one-stop shopping, that I mean,
Sure.
what a pleasure to have you folks take care of all this. Talk to me about Sterling Transitions then. So a bunch of years, you started 2012, I think you said, right? You started. How did you come up with the idea?
So I started it in, I had my own business for a while, and I was working in publishing, in print publishing. I had a senior magazine, and then I did some marketing for a company doing some senior products. So I knew the baby boomer market was a good industry to be in. And when I was transitioning out of publishing, I wanted to stay working with seniors and people that were in that stage of life. And I have also moved many, many times. You said, where did I grow up? It's not an easy answer because I've moved a lot. There was one time I moved 12 times in 12 years. I moved every single year. So I knew how to move. I know a lot about seniors. And so I found this industry. It's called Senior Move Managers. There's actually an association. It's called the National Association of Senior Move Managers, NASM.org. And I found this association and I learned how to run the business and I started it. And quickly thereafter, I was flooded with business. It was, I did a lot of networking and met a lot of people and got the word out about what I was doing. And then Betty joined quickly thereafter and got her auctioneer license and we started doing the selling part. So, it became full service when Betty started, but just my background with seniors and with moving, it just came together very easily.
How do you define your target market? Like who are the people who should be contacting you, or you actually ideally they contact you?
Folks that are, I always say it's sort of that last move to feel comfortable and be in that, whether it's a retirement community or just a smaller patio home. And even now, I don't want to put an age group, but it's that last move. And usually our last move is downsizing and just having the things that we need. We accumulate. And then it's like, oh, it's all too much. It's too heavy. So we're there to help. And it's emotional. It's difficult making those decisions of what to take with us. But sometimes a lot of times it can be a couple and one has maybe had a health change and the other one's feeling the pressure of the responsibility of taking care of them and taking care of the home. And they go, oh gosh, we gotta think about this. And maybe we need something a little smaller. So that's when we can come in and being the physical labor of helping, packing, moving things around for them. And they're just using the mental capacity to make the decisions. And I think it's so rewarding when we walk in and somebody goes, oh gosh, you can do all of that. And you see their shoulders go down and they're like, oh, this is really attainable. I think people are afraid to make that move. But we try to make it light and easy and fun. And we really focus on them. And then we say, okay, we've got you in your new place. We're going to take care of the rest. And then they can move on with their life and enjoy it. And we'll take care of the rest. And then they get a check in the mail shortly after. So it's a win-win.
Talk about also the process that when you come in, and it's nice that COVID restrictions are, lifting too as we speak, but it's probably made it also a lot easier for people now too, that you're actually going back to actually seeing them, or that, so you come in and you'll take all for the auction, you'll take all the pictures, you'll figure out how to display it properly.
So we have a team of people that will come in once we get to the selling side of things and packing sometimes. We have a team of people that come in. We have photography equipment. We set up backdrops and everything, and we make the stuff look beautiful. And we put it online. And it starts at $10, but it doesn't sell for $10. A lot of times, just two people want it, and it goes to the highest bidder. We don't do reserves on things, which kind of gives people pause sometimes. But online auctions it's a game for a lot of people. They have a lot of fun doing them. A lot of people really enjoy doing them. We have a lot of repeat buyers. And if the second you put a reserve, which means you put it where it won't sell unless it hits a certain number, then people don't want to bid on it at all. So we have found we just start everything at the same price, and wherever it goes is where it goes. So it's a fun process for a lot of people to do.
Let me put you on the spot in terms of, you've been doing this for a bunch of years. What's the most unusual thing you've ever had to sell, or anything come to mind?
Well, we have a lot of, every house has a lot of collections. So every time we start in a house, we learn a lot about one particular thing, whether it's African masks or it's, whatever it may be.
Sewing
whatever.
Items, woodworking tools.
We just had a house that, I think this was probably at least the most recent interesting thing. The gentleman he passed away, but he was an engineer at RCA Records. So he was one of the pioneers on music and engineering and speakers and things. So his house was full of record players.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about
hundreds,
like 700-800. And underneath all of those record players, we did 3 auctions at his house to get it completely empty. But underneath all of those, we found a really cool 240Z,
1971
or something like that. So underneath hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of record players, we found this really cool vintage car that had been sitting there for a really long time with low miles. So we find interesting things just going under all of the other stuff too. But the collections are interesting because we learn a lot. We know more than we've ever known about records now. And then we find some interesting stuff in the process.
Do you ever have something that won't sell?
Sometimes.
Sure. Yes.
And so but talk about that. So what happens then?
Well, it depends on the seller's request. They have the option of getting the item back, or what we do is we dissolve the actual lot that the items were in, and we set them. Then comes the yard sale. Then when people are coming to pick up their winning item, then they see these items in person, and where there might have been a lot or a collection of something, they may just want one item, and then they can just offer us a couple dollars. What's funny is the lot starts at 10, and sometimes they offer $10, but they really just want that one item. They don't want the whole collection. So they'll pay $10. And when it's all said and done, we've made a little more money to the bottom line, and we've emptied the house. And we might fill one car up with items to take to a donation at the very end.
So the point of the example you just gave, so if somebody comes, even for that one item, they have to take everything. They can't just.
Our goal is to empty a house in 5 days. So
I love it.
They're not allowed to leave anything behind. If you really just wanted that, you can stop at Goodwill on your way home and drop off the 4 other things, but you have to take all of it when you buy the lot. And
do you usually succeed in emptying a house within 5 days?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what we do. Mm-hmm.
Is that exciting? So people don't necessarily see it. Talk about 2 other things too that very exciting, I think, about what you folks are doing. So you mentioned already that now you've been in Nashville for this time, but now you're starting to go elsewhere as well. And so you mentioned, I think we're in Atlanta, and where else are you now?
in Southwest Florida. It's kind of close to Naples. It's called Englewood.
Yeah. So what gave you the idea to do that?
They approached us.
Mm-hmm.
They came to us. The licensee in Florida is a realtor, and she saw opportunity to focus in on a particular demographic with her real estate and offer this service as well. So that allowed her to work with seniors and helping them find new residents, and then offer this service also. And then Atlanta, this was somebody who was in a career change due to COVID, and thought, well, if I'm out in this world, I'm gonna go a different direction altogether. So,
and she'd been following us for a while, and she thought she was always very intrigued with what we were doing. So when she changed careers, she wanted to jump into what we were doing.
And the cool thing, if we can mention, I don't want to mention a negative term or word into this, but the cool thing I think about it is that this is not a franchise operation that you get people into, right? That
correct.
They come into it, and I guess you say almost like partners of yours. Is that how you would describe it when they set this up? Yeah.
They're licensees, so they become a part of our brand, part of the family of our brand, and so they can choose it within their area if they feel that the moving part and the packing part is the most important and most biggest need. They can choose to just do that, or we show them how to do all of the services, and they can kind of pick and choose what makes the most sense for where they are and what they want to do. So in that way, it's not a franchise. They can choose what makes sense for them, but they are considered licensees, and they are part of our brand, and they're on our website, and we do marketing and PR for them, and we help them grow their business and answer questions as they're growing it. So
Well, even as you mentioned with the auction, so that each licensee you're promoting and helping each licensee as they get auctions off the ground.
If they want to. In some states you have to have an auctioneer license. Right. So that, depending on what makes sense. And our advice is do just some direct selling and see how that feels. Having the auctioneer license and offering that service does entail a little bit more labor and getting people involved in the work. You can do the packing and the sorting and the move management by yourself. So if you just want to be a one-man show, that's the way to go, and then outsource the selling. But if you enjoy the selling and you see a need for the selling, which Tanya learned as she was doing hers, she said, oh gosh, there's not a lot of resources in this market. And that's when I came in and we started doing estate sales, but then quickly transitioned to the online auction.
Was that fun for you, Betty, getting into the auctioneering aspect?
Who would have thought? Like, never in a million years did I think that I would be an auctioneer. And I don't do it live. Tanya always jokes and says
she has a
I have a cow. But I don't do it live. We just do the online version. We call the online auction, Amazon for auctioneers services, because you can shop it sitting on your couch. The live auctions are still highly desirable. It's a community event for folks, and they love it, and they've missed it for years. And we have a lot of auctioneers that we're friends with and we've learned from, but we just do it's just a little different service.
Final question, aside from selling transitions, can you give one tip each maybe for somebody interested in decluttering or downsizing?
You go first. I gotta think.
I think the most important thing is to think about what they want to keep, what's important to them. When we're as a third party, when we're sitting there watching someone and helping them, they say, oh yeah, I want this, I want this, I want this. And they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's so obvious what they love and what they don't love. And they really need to focus on what they want to keep and not get all mixed up in well, I know I don't want it, but what is the value? I know I don't want it, but maybe somebody else wants it. So they start to get all wound up in all these different parts of it. And really, they just need to keep bringing back, do I want this or do I not? And that's the most important decision for the first kind of go around the house. It helps keep them very focused if they keep going back to that.
Good recommendation. Same thing too, Betty. You have one thing top of your head?
It's Tanya's tip. I don't know why she didn't say it, but it's that gift that you got from somebody and it was really generous and kind of them, but it's not your style. The act of them giving you that gift, that's as far as it has to go. I think people feel like the mug that their grandchild made for them has to go with them to the grave. And that's not the case. They made it for you and they enjoyed giving it to you, but they're never going to hold it against you if you don't take it with them. So don't feel tied to things just because they were gifts. And the other thing I think is important is if you have a 12-piece china set, you're probably the next place you're going to, you're not going to have a party.
So
you
true.
Can take 4. You can just, if you think it'll just be a couple and one other couple coming to visit, you can just take 4. Nobody's ever going to know that we're selling, 8 instead of 12.
And ironically, we know somebody could help you sell the 8 remaining pieces.
That's right.
And so, Tanya, I'll ask you one last time. Folks want to get more information about Sterling Transitions. Best bet is to do what?
Our website is www.sterlingtransitions.com. And we also have an Instagram page, which is @Sterling Transitions, and then Facebook, which is also Sterling Transitions.
Okay. I'd like to thank you both very much for being my guests this first half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. And I'm going to see if I can do this magic here, make you disappear. And thanks, guys. Really enjoyed that. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, and as we say goodbye to those folks, I'm going to invite our other guests to come back in. And one's here already, I think, and there they are. Perfect timing. And as I make an announcement, as they work their way into the studio, I should mention that my studio fair view here, WPVM's mission is to foster community through programming. It cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on the radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, wpvmfm.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. It's now my pleasure to introduce my next 2 guests, and they are Stevem Samuels and David Hopes. And welcome aboard, guys. And,
Hi.
And David's ahead of me, and you both were, in that they got to wave to all their fans and friends on Facebook world. And David, I'm going to have to ask you, we have another guest there with you as well. Wants to wave? Okay. Okay. We had to get him in. And he is who?
I got a friend. You've got a friend.
And who is that friend?
It's Froggy the Gremlin. Hi, kids. Hiya.
Stephen, we have a show idea here. Anyway, I should mention
yes.
that
it's David's one man, one puppet show.
Okay. Well, look,
and he'll probably have it written before we finish this interview.
Yeah. Well, look who talks about one man shows, and we need the birdcage. So
God.
Anyway,
tired the bird. Wait, it's in the closet. I'll go get it.
Inside joke, folks. Anyway, Stephen is a former general manager, occasional actor with Charles Ludlam's Ridiculous Theatrical Company in New York City. He's former senior editor at TCG Books and American Theater Magazine, former artistic associate in Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. As a bad habit, I love this, of co-founding theater companies, including Magnetic Theater and the Sublime Theater, a bad habit. As an actor and director, producer, and playwright, he has been involved in more than 75 world premiere productions. As for David's background, David, I want to put you on the spot in that I'm going to give you a chance to give your background in the next 3.5 hours. So if you highlight the Reader's Digest version.
3.5 hours is not enough.
Okay.
I've recently retired from UNCA, where I was professor of English for like 1,000 years. And I have spent that time and the time since, the time before, being a writer in, I think, every possible genre. I've published a number of books in all genres. And I took to playwriting at one point and found delight in it. And Stephen was generous enough not only to direct a couple of things, but to publish my first published play. So that brings us to Washington Place and the matter of the day.
And there it is. So we'll mention that the play and Washington Place by David Hopes. I just love the play too. And let's talk a little bit about the process, Stephen. So I mentioned before you produced, directed, starred in, done a whole bunch of different things. But when the Sublime Press, you're now printing plays and publishing plays. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
When did you start doing that?
May 31st.
Oh, really? Because
is when the first titles were officially published.
okay, very exciting. Because I know we go back when wasn't that many years ago when you started the company, right? You were involved in Sublime. What was the name of the company? Is the
It's the Sublime Theater and Press.
right? So I knew
And-
so. I knew you when you were Sublime Theater. You were mostly involved in the theater aspect of this. And then you started publishing.
Yes,
Now,
you also knew me when I ran the Magnetic Theater.
we did that too. I knew
Yes.
you were when you were a little boy of 7 years years old.
Yes.
But what got you into publishing plays?
Well, publishing has been a rather large part of my background altogether. I've always been involved in the worlds of both theater and publishing in weird alternating phases. But the highlight of my publishing career to date was when I was with Theater Communications Group, which is the national organization for America's not-for-profit theaters. And I had actually gone there. You mentioned that I had worked with the Ridiculous Theatrical Company and my master, Charles Ludlam. And I found Theater Communications Group because I was I had already published Charles' plays with what was then called Harper and Row, long since HarperCollins. So I had already done that, and I was working with Charles' essays, which I eventually published as Ridiculous Theater's Scourge of Human Folly, which was a title of one of his essays. I can't take credit for that. And I was seeking a publisher. My experience with a major publisher and a volume of plays was very disappointing. It didn't help that Charles had passed away between the time he agreed to publish the plays and when they got published. But the fact of the matter is the major publishers are dealing with very, very large numbers of books, new titles that they publish every year. In the case that I was dealing with, the editor I was working with was responsible for 50 titles every year. And no one expects 50 titles to sell well. Basically, publishers like theater producers, like movie producers and television producers, record producers, nobody knows really what's going to sell. They can have, they might like it themselves, but they don't necessarily know what is going to appeal to the public or what they'll be able to sell well. So in some sense, it's a volume business. They will publish 50 titles hoping that they know that half of them will tank. They know that a few of the others will do moderately well, and then a very, very, very small percentage will become bestsellers and basically finance the entire operation. So what that also means is because they're trying to keep all their people employed, they have to work at a certain scale. That's why they have to publish all those titles. And they don't believe in all those titles, or they may have personal reasons for wanting them to get into print, but they're not going to spend a lot of time or any money on trying to sell them. And that, sadly, is what happened with the complete plays of Charles Ludlam. And it made me very sad. So when I was trying to do something with his essays and interviews, I decided to seek out a small press, because with a small press, every title matters. And I thought I should see if I could find a theater book specialty company, because maybe they would actually have the contacts and know how to go about selling plays. So that brought me with shopping bags of manuscript to the offices of Theater Communications Group. And it took them 6 months more to decide to publish that title. But they offered me a job 2 weeks later, which was really quite shocking. And I needed a job, so I went to work. And as I say, I'd done other things in publishing before, but and that was an extraordinary experience. The manuscript waiting on my desk at TCG the day I arrived was 600 pages, and I was told it was the second half of a play. And they didn't know what to do with it. My first day on the job, what I had to do was figure out what this thing was and whether or not they should publish it. It happened to be something called Perestroika, which is the second part of Angels in America by Tony Kushner. And that play, well, I went back years later and reread my reader's report because I couldn't figure out what did I said about this thing. And I said, you know, first of all, it was the craziest play I'd ever encountered, and that was saying a lot since I had come from the ridiculous theatrical company. That's because, you know, there was a scene with a woman in Alaska chewing a tree down with her teeth. I mean, it was a very odd play. I also said, I think this would take about 7 hours to perform. But I also thought that it would probably be cut at least in half by the time it went into production, which was an eerily accurate prediction. The final version was about 3.5 hours long. I said that it was the most ambitious American play I had encountered since Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and that the man wrote with the voice of an angel. And my suggestion, and this was my first day on the job, was that not only we should immediately commit to publishing this play, but that we should offer to publish anything else this man ever wrote. Angels in America became a legitimate bestseller, which is unbelievably rare for plays, especially these days. It was much more common in the 40s and 50s. Yeah, basically publishing Tony Kushner's work helped subsidize Theater Communications Group for about 10 years. So that's how I started publishing plays.
And let me fast forward that a little bit too. So that's when you started then, and then with the Sublime now is your company that you started, and the mission is the
with
same
John
thing.
Crutchfield and others.
Okay, and the mission is the same thing too, to publish plays. Is that correct?
No, the Sublime Theater and Press is both a theatrical production unit and now a press. Finally, I've made the name legitimate. Let me explain that. I had always my focus as a producer has always been on original works, and particularly in Asheville, I've had the unbelievable pleasure of being able to work almost exclusively with local writers like David, who I was extraordinarily lucky to meet, and John Crutchfield, and quite a few others. It had always been my intention in Magnetic Theater days to publish the plays, because if you can't get plays into print, you can't establish their permanent worth. And you also have a very, very hard time reaching a broad public. You know, theater is a very local experience. If I can't get companies around the country to produce the plays, the only chance these plays have to reach the world and then maybe get produced otherwise is if they're published. Unfortunately, because I do so many things and because I am so busy when I'm producing, I never had an opportunity to put that plan into action. And similarly, when we started the Sublime in 2018, I've just been far too busy producing, directing, acting, and writing. It was impossible to move forward with these other projects. And therefore, the pandemic has actually played a little bit into my hands. We were deeply into rehearsals of a new play by Julian Voris that we had to cancel. And suddenly I had much more time on my hands than I was expecting. And I went right to work trying to activate the press.
And let's talk a little bit about the press. And David, let me have you jump in a little bit, because I know you just held up the one play. But in terms of even when you were teaching and others, okay, wait, we're going to be publishing David's his other stuff. But talk about the process, David, in terms of reading plays. And as Stephen said, I remember as a kid, I used to remember reading plays in school, and I really enjoyed it. But do people still read plays? And even when you were teaching, did you have people read plays?
I did assign plays. Whether they read them or not, I wasn't all the time sure. I remember vividly when I was in public school that teachers would have us read plays.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember those plays so very well. They were, they were the representative of their own time, but I remember them very well, and how important it is to read plays out loud. So yeah, I did assign plays. Students find it difficult to assimilate a play unless they see it. So modern times, even though it is difficult for live theater, is good because live theater is available on the internet, and they can see productions at any time by just going to the computer. So in some ways, the world has turned out so the teaching of theater anyhow is easier than it once was, because you can see it happening, and that's so important. I don't get a play unless I've seen it. There so many times I'll be asked to judge a playwriting contest or something, and I'll think, I don't get it. But when I see it, it's completely different. So I think even professionals are stymied unless it is a performative art form. It's not a literary art form. So it's not essentially a literary form. So you're not really perceiving it unless it's being acted.
Because when
Hey,
you say that,
I need to I'm sorry. I have to jump in a little bit. I don't disagree. In fact, when I was at TCG, we had a campaign that was called Plays Are Literature, which made me crazy. Not because plays aren't literature, but because it seemed to me that emphasizing the literary aspect was to denigrate the performative aspect. So I think a balance has to be struck, because it's true that some people have a lot of trouble reading plays, although I have always found that surprising, in that some of the very most popular fiction of modern times is often written almost entirely in dialogue. So it's an odd puzzle to me. But even if you accept the notion that it is hard to read plays or to really get them, and David is absolutely right, even professionals often make mistakes. I make mistakes. John Crutchfield had a play. I read the script. I said, I can't direct it. I don't understand it. I don't know what you're doing. And he went off and made the play physically, a production, and I thought it was wonderful. It's true. I didn't get it when I read it. But at the same time, there is a great deal often that we miss in plays if we only see them, because some plays work on the page and not on the stage. Some plays work on the stage but not on the page. What I'm looking for in terms of publishing is the kinds of work that I think do both. And if I am right, there is tremendous value in reading a play, even if you've already seen it, if you're working with literary artists like David and John Crutchfield, both of whom are also poets. There is stuff that you can get by reading the plays that you absolutely miss in production.
well, David, isn't that true also, I guess, with the books as well? One can make the same kind of argument that some books are great to read and you can't see them as a movie or a show or something like that. And some shows, sometimes don't make for a good book. Is that true as well?
Well, how should I put this? Of course, every sensibility is different. But I think all literary genres lose when they're not embodied by the human voice. When I'm testing a page of prose, I will read it out loud. When I'm testing a poem, I will read it out loud. When my students would have, I realized I come at a lot of this from the basis of being a teacher, which I was for like 40 years. So part of this is involved with that. But most problems that a student will have with understanding a poem disappear when they read it out loud. So I think that in some ways, let me take back a step and say, in the history of music, all right, it was an odd thing for music not to be sung. All right, that music until early modern times, until the late medieval period, was sung, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was either sung or played so you could dance to it. So there was an involvement of the human body in some way. music beginning in with instrumental pieces, the Renaissance and onward, becomes abstract when you just sit and listen. All right, and that's not a criticism, because I love that abstract music that you just sit and listen to, but it is a different sort of thing. And I think that that, in my opinion, all literary efforts are improved by hearing them, even if they weren't written for that. Having it, a reading of Finnegan's Wake makes more sense than reading it. Even though it might not make sense, you still get a character saying these words. You still get a personality.
I would like to say that none of the plays we've published are as difficult as Finnegan's Wake.
I'm working on that.
That's fine. I'll publish that too. We'll produce and publish it.
We'll talk a little bit, Stephen, then about the 3 plays I guess you published so far, and then this is hopefully just the beginning of a whole bunch of other plays you're going to be publishing. But just talk about them, if you would, please.
Sure. The first one, of course, is David's Washington Place, which is an extraordinary script and a wonderful read. It's about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York. And what was the year, David?
1911.
1911. Thank you. Which is a terrible tragedy. And I was very resistant to this particular subject. Not that it didn't mean a great deal to me. I come from that background. I come from that part of the world. But I thought it was going to be a very dreary, difficult, sad, awful experience. And from the opening pages, it was so clear that David had created such a vivid life for particularly the young women we mostly know nothing about who died in this tragedy. It was so full of life that I felt I had, even though it comes to a terrible, tragic ending, the play just sings and dances, and I felt utterly compelled to produce and direct it, and was very fortunate that David allowed me to do so. And I think we had a wonderful experience. I know that you, Blaine, really loved the show.
Yeah, it's even
but it needs a further life.
Well, let's talk about
and
that
it's hard
first.
it's hard to get there if we can't make these plays available. And let me also say, very few, nonfiction sells better than fiction. Novels sell better than short story collections. Short story collections sell better than poetry, and poetry sells better than plays.
Oh my God!
So you don't go into this to make money. Now, it's true that there are play script specialist publishers like Samuel French and New Dramatists or Dramatist Play Service, excuse me, and a few others. But through the years, mainstream publishers have tended to publish fewer and fewer plays, and most small presses with a literary bent are still trying to sell copies. So they're focused on novels and short stories for the most part, a little bit of poetry sprinkled in. But you'll see very few plays published in quality editions. And that was the objective here. And again, my hope is that another play that we've just published by John Crutchfield called My Crazy, My Love, which is one of the most insane and diabolical family farces I've ever encountered. How will people find it? Now, it's not going to be easy for them to find these books. They're going to have to go online to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or one of my favorites, bookshop.org, which is works with independent bookstores. But every piece of writing in its various stages of development literally looks very different and creates a different impression. If it's in a manuscript form, in handwriting, it looks like one thing. If you see it typed up, that's another. If you see galley pages from a book in process of being published, it looks a little different. And then there's finally a published version. And at each stage, Someone like me, looking at the same material again and again and again, I become more impressed. I like the thing better in the beautiful published edition than in the typescript. It makes a stronger impression. And that's what I'm hoping to do for people like John and David by putting these things into legitimate book form, carefully designed. I'm hoping that people will pick them up as souvenirs. You know, in England, plays are published essentially as programs and sold during the original runs. That does not happen here, but it could. And it's kind of what I'm inching toward.
By the way, the one you just held up, you also produced that, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and the only bad thing about reading it, and was a phenomenally interesting play, is they won't get to see this one character, I think, as the father. Is that correct? In the play. And yeah, Stephen, it was such a same thing too. And David, with your stuff too, it's the same kind of thing. When I go to theater, I really like not expecting anything, you know. So in both plays, your play, the Washington plays, I had no expectations of it. You know, same thing too. Fire, you know, and who's going to want to see where everybody dies? It just delighted me to see it. And what was Stephen said was so phenomenal about it. It came to life, you know, just all the I can see them in front of me, you know, even now. Just love that play. And the play you just held up, I have no idea how it would read, but boy, was that a crazy play.
Well, see, one of an interesting thing to me is that say when Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller were at the heights of their careers, their plays were published and often sold extremely well. They were also very, very careful to write stage directions that helped it, almost turned those manuscripts almost into novels. That's how extensive and beautiful the stage directions were. John writes stunning stage directions. There's as much comedy in the stage directions as there is in the dialogue. David also is such a wonderful prose writer. People should be reading his novels. My God, he's so good. So these qualities also exist in these particular published scripts. They're highly readable. David,
I see another play for you down the road is you can write this play about this guy who peddles plays. You know, it's almost like Death of a Salesman kind of thing, you know.
I've been taking notes as Stephen was talking. So,
but just listen to him. You know, it says to me that there's a story here somewhere. And David, let me. I can't believe we're almost running out of time here. Let me ask you, aside from Stephen's publishing the one play, what are you working on as we speak?
As we speak, relative to the theater, I'm continuing work on a series that has to do with American history. I began by writing 3 plays about Abraham Lincoln. I've written about McKinley, and most recently about Woodrow Wilson. I think that Washington Place is part of it. I've written about American poets. So I look at the example of Shakespeare and say, you know, he has English history plays. Why don't I do the same thing? So I have been working, it's not exclusively on that, but consistently on finding moments in American history to valorize by having a play written about them.
Quick question, if I may. Do you have a preference in terms of doing all these different things, forgetting teaching for the time being, plays, novels, poems? Do you have a preference, or do you like doing them all at the same time?
I do them all at the same time.
I know. Poetry
is how do I put it? A delight. It is. I don't want to say it's easy, but it is fluid. It is what my soul does. So that is the easiest. But the others of them, you know, they. I think writing plays is the second most fun because it's really related to poetry. It's at least as I practice it, it's not unlike poetry.
Half a minute left. 2 final questions. One for David, one for Stephen. Folks want to get in touch with you, David, find out more information about you. The best bet is what?
Let me give you my literary blog, which is davidhopes.blog. And they can find what I'm doing, you know, in the literary world there.
Fantastic. And Stephen, 15 seconds, way to get in touch with you is what?
www.thesublimetheater.org. Theater is spelled with an ER at the end.
The correct way.
Sublimetheater.org.
Exactly. Anyway, I'd like to thank both of you for being my guests this
Well,
second
thank
half
you.
hour on the Blaine's World Show, and I hope to see you both soon in person. Stay with me as I wind down. Okay, catch you guys. See everybody soon.
Bye-bye.